The massive crystalline chamber stretched endlessly above, its walls pulsing with soft blue light that had witnessed countless decisions across 2,000 years. 12 ancient species sat in their towering seats, each representative larger and more imposing than any human could ever be. They called themselves the Galactic Council, and for over 2 millennia, they had decided the fate of 847 star systems with the casual confidence of gods. Ambassador Li Jinho walked slowly across the polished floor, his footsteps echoing in the vast space. He was small compared to the beings watching him, but he carried himself with quiet dignity. His dark suit was simple, unremarkable, just like humanity had learned it to be over the past 50 years. Behind him walked his aide, Park Sumi, carrying data tablets that contained reports from 12 human colonies scattered across the galaxy. 50 years ago, when humanity first managed to break the light barrier and stumble into the greater galaxy, these same beings had looked down at them with what they called benevolence. The Council had graciously allowed the newcomer species to join their order, but only as junior members. Humans could have 12 worlds, no more. They could trade, but only using approved technology. They could explore, but only in designated zones. Most importantly, they could never develop military technology beyond what the Council deemed necessary for basic defense. Jinho had accepted those terms with gratitude that wasn't entirely fake. His people were alone among the stars, facing civilizations millions of years older than Earth's oldest empires. The restrictions seemed reasonable, even protective. Better to be a junior partner than an enemy of forces beyond human comprehension. The human colonies continued to expand their population, rumbled the Zeltharian representative, its tentacles writhing with what Jinho had learned to recognize as mild annoyance. Their birth rates exceed projected parameters by 37%. The Veltharian delegate clicked its mandibles in agreement. They also show disturbing adaptability. The colony on Kepler 442b now supports 3 million inhabitants on a world we classified as barely habitable. Jinho kept his expression neutral, though pride warmed his chest. That particular world had been written off by 4 different species as too hostile for permanent settlement. Its gravity was crushing, its atmosphere toxic to most galactic species, and its temperature swings could freeze nitrogen solid or melt lead within the same day. But humans had not just survived there, they had thrived. The colony now exported rare minerals and had developed new agricultural techniques that worked in extreme conditions. Perhaps, Jinho said carefully, this demonstrates humanity's potential contribution to galactic society. Our adaptability could open new worlds for colonization and resource extraction. The High Arbiter, a crystalline being whose species had ruled the Council for 800 years, leaned forward slightly. Its voice resonated through the chamber like breaking glass. Your adaptability is precisely what concerns us, human. In our experience, species that adapt too quickly become unpredictable. Unpredictability leads to chaos. Sumi stepped forward and offered a data tablet to the nearest council member. These are productivity reports from all human colonies. Our mining operations have exceeded quotas by an average of 40% while maintaining safety standards above galactic norms. Our trade contributions have grown every year since our admission to the council. The Arctarian representative, a being of pure energy contained within a geometric form, pulsed with colors that Jinho's translator interpreted as skepticism. Impressive numbers. But tell us, Ambassador, how do your people accomplish such feats with the primitive technology we observe in your colonies? Jinho felt a familiar tension in his shoulders. This question came up more frequently in recent months. The truth was that human colonies used exactly the technology the Council permitted them to use, nothing more. But humans had always been good at making the most of limited resources. Earth's history was full of civilizations that had built wonders with simple tools through ingenuity and determination. Hard work and efficient planning, Jinho replied simply. My people learned long ago that success comes from making the best use of what you have available. The council members exchanged glances that somehow managed to look concerned despite their alien features. The hegemon of Zelthara's tentacles coiled tighter around its ceremonial staff. We have been observing humanity for 5 decades, the hegemon said, its voice carrying undertones of suspicion. Your species shows troubling patterns. You establish colonies in places others cannot survive. You achieve productivity levels that strain credibility. Most concerning, your population grows at rates that suggest either carelessness or deliberate expansion. Jinho felt the weight of history pressing down on the chamber. He knew this moment had been building for years as human colonies continued to succeed beyond council expectations. The other species were beginning to see humanity not as grateful junior members, but as potential competition. We are not careless, Jinho said firmly. Every human colony follows council regulations exactly. We expand only where permitted, use only approved technology, and report all activities as required. If our success seems unusual, perhaps it reflects the opportunities created by the council's wise governance. The flattery felt bitter in his mouth, but diplomacy required careful words. Around him, the ancient beings that controlled the galaxy's fate continued their evaluation. Jinho could feel their growing unease, their instinctive fear of anything that didn't fit their established patterns. For 50 years, humanity had played the role of eager students, humble and grateful for any scraps of knowledge or territory the council chose to share. But as he stood in that vast chamber, surrounded by beings who saw his species as an increasingly uncomfortable anomaly, Jinho wondered how much longer the masquerade could continue. The galaxy was about to find out. Retry. The crystalline chamber felt different today. Ambassador Park Minho noticed it the moment he entered the vast space that had hosted galactic decisions for 2 millennia. The usual soft blue glow from the walls seemed harsher, more clinical. The 12 towering seats of the council members cast longer shadows across the polished floor. Even the air itself seemed to carry an electric tension that made the hair on his arms stand up. Minho walked steadily toward the center of the chamber, his aide Kim Jizu following 2 steps behind. They had been summoned with unusual formality, told only that the council had reached a decision regarding humanity's future in galactic society. The message had been brief, official, and somehow ominous in its lack of detail. High Arbiter Zenthak rose from the central seat, its crystalline form catching and reflecting the chamber's light in patterns that hurt to look at directly. The being's voice resonated through the space with the authority of ages, each word falling like a hammer blow on an anvil. The Galactic Council has completed its comprehensive review of humanity's activities within our sovereign space, Zenthak announced. After careful consideration of all evidence and extensive deliberation, we have reached our final decision. Minho felt his stomach tighten. Something about the formal language and the emphasis on final suggested this would not be the diplomatic discussion he had hoped for. Around the chamber, the other council members leaned forward in their seats, their alien features impossible to read but somehow conveying a unified sense of resolve. The hegemon of Zelthra rose next, its massive tentacles writhing with what Minho had learned to recognize as barely controlled anger. Your species has violated the spirit of our agreement. You were granted 12 worlds as junior members, with clear understanding that expansion would be gradual and supervised. We have not exceeded the boundaries set by this council, Minho replied carefully. Every human colony exists within approved zones. Boundaries of space, yes, the Arctarian representative interjected, its energy form pulsing with agitated colors. But you have exceeded boundaries of expectation, of proper conduct, of acceptable growth. Your colonies support populations triple our projected maximums. Your mining operations extract resources at impossible rates. Your settlements flourish on worlds that should have claimed thousands of lives. The Veltharian delegate clicked its mandibles in sharp agreement. Most troubling is your apparent indifference to natural limitations. When the Kepler 442b colony was established, we expected standard failure rates. Instead, you have created a thriving population center that exceeds the productivity of established worlds with far more favorable conditions. Minho exchanged a quick glance with Jizu, who was recording everything on her tablet. The accusations felt surreal. Humanity was being criticized for being too successful, too adaptable, too good at making the most of difficult circumstances. High Arbiter, Minho said, choosing his words with extreme care, if our colonies have exceeded expectations, surely this demonstrates humanity's value to galactic society. Our contributions to trade networks have grown every year. Our mining operations provide resources that benefit all council species. Zenthak's crystalline features seem to sharpen. Your contributions are noted. However, the Council has determined that humanity's expansion patterns represent a long-term threat to galactic stability. Species that grow too quickly and adapt too readily have historically become sources of conflict and disruption. The chamber fell silent except for the low humming of the crystalline walls. Minho felt the weight of that silence pressing down on him like a physical force. When Zenthak spoke again, each word was measured and final. Therefore, the Galactic Council issues the following ultimatum to humanity. First, all expansion beyond current colony boundaries will cease immediately. Second, humanity will surrender administrative control of 6 colonies to council oversight, to be redistributed to species better equipped to manage them properly. Third, all human mining and industrial operations will be scaled back to levels deemed appropriate for a junior member species. Minho felt the blood drain from his face. You're asking us to abandon half our colonies and cripple our economy. We are requiring it, the hegemon corrected, its tentacles coiling around its ceremonial staff. Your kind spreads across worlds like an infestation, consuming resources and multiplying beyond sustainable limits. This expansion ends now, before it threatens the stability that has maintained galactic peace for 2,000 years. And if humanity refuses? Minho asked quietly. The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop several degrees. Every council member turned their attention toward the human ambassador, and for a moment Minho felt like a small animal being studied by predators deciding whether he was worth the effort to hunt. Zenthak's voice took on a quality that sent chills down Minho's spine. Then you will be reminded why the Council has maintained order across 847 star systems for over 2 millennia. There are consequences far worse than simple extinction, Ambassador Park. Do not mistake our patience for weakness. You have 30 standard rotations to comply, added the Arctarian representative. Failure to meet these requirements will result in immediate enforcement action. The Council has dealt with ambitious species before. None chose to test our resolve twice. As Minho prepared to leave the chamber, the hegemon of Zelthara spoke one final time. Your people showed promise, human. But promise without restraint becomes danger. We will not permit another species to disrupt the order we have spent millennia perfecting. Walking back to his transport, Minho activated what appeared to be a standard communication device. His message to Earth contained only 4 words, but they carried the weight of humanity's future among the stars. The masquerade is over. Across human space, 50 years of careful patience was about to end. The message reached every human colony simultaneously, traveling through communication networks that officially didn't exist. On mining stations, in agricultural centers, aboard transport vessels, and in administrative buildings across 12 worlds, the same 4 words appeared on screens that were supposed to be incapable of receiving such transmissions. The masquerade is over. Administrator Kim Yuna stood in her office overlooking the bustling mining complex on Kepler 442b, watching the words fade from her display. For 50 years, she had played her role perfectly. To any outside observer, she managed a simple resource extraction operation using basic council-approved technology. Her reports showed reasonable productivity, acceptable safety margins, and steady but unremarkable growth. She walked to what appeared to be a standard supply cabinet and placed her palm against a scanner hidden beneath the metal surface. The wall behind her desk slid away, revealing a corridor that stretched deep into the mountain. Yuna had not walked this path in over a decade, but her feet remembered the way. The cavern beyond defied everything the Council believed about human capabilities. Massive construction bays stretched into the darkness, filled with ships that bore no resemblance to the crude vessels humanity supposedly possessed. Sleek hulls reflected dim lighting, their surfaces covered in technologies that would have made Council scientists weep with envy. These weren't mining ships or simple transports. They were predators, built for purposes the galaxy was about to understand. Similar scenes played out across human space. On New Geneva, what had appeared to be a simple agricultural research station revealed massive underground laboratories where human scientists had spent decades advancing technologies the Council had forbidden them to develop. On Harmony Station, mining equipment that looked primitive suddenly began transforming, revealing weapons systems that operated on principles no Council species had ever encountered. Admiral Choi Daeho materialized in the Council chamber through a quantum transmission system that shouldn't have existed. The technology required for such instantaneous travel across galactic distances was theoretically impossible according to Council science. Yet there he stood, his presence commanding in a way that made several representatives shift uncomfortably in their seats. Gone was the humble posture humanity had maintained for 5 decades. Daeho stood straight, his shoulders square, his expression carrying the quiet confidence of someone who no longer needed to pretend weakness. His uniform was different too, bearing insignia and materials that suggested technological capabilities far beyond what the Council had permitted. Esteemed Council members, Daeho began, his voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber without amplification. For 50 years, my species has honored your restrictions. We built our colonies within your designated boundaries. We used only the technologies you approved. We presented ourselves as the junior partners you demanded we become. High Arbiter Zenthak leaned forward, its crystalline features reflecting light in sharp, uncomfortable patterns. How are you here, human? The transmission technology required for this communication is beyond your permitted capabilities. Daeho smiled, and there was something in that expression that made the ancient beings around him suddenly aware they might have made a terrible miscalculation. That assumes we ever limited ourselves to your permissions. We simply chose not to reveal our true capabilities. There's a difference. Across the chamber, emergency alerts began flashing on Council monitoring systems. Data streams showed impossible readings from human space. Asteroid mining operations were reconfiguring themselves into orbital defense platforms. Colony ships that had seemed like simple transports were powering up weapon systems that registered energy signatures beyond anything in Council databases. The hegemon of Zelthara's tentacles writhed with growing alarm. This is impossible. We have monitored your colonies for decades. Your technology is primitive, your capabilities limited. You monitored what we allowed you to see, Deho replied calmly. Did you really believe a species capable of achieving faster-than-light travel would simply stop advancing because you asked them to? We never stopped developing, Hegemon. We simply became very good at hiding our progress. On the chamber's main display, images began appearing from human colonies. Manufacturing facilities that had pretended to be simple processing plants revealed their true purpose as shipyards capable of producing vessels with technologies that made Council fleets look like museum pieces. Research stations that claimed to study agriculture or geology displayed laboratories working with exotic matter and dimensional physics. The Arcturian representative pulsed with colors that Deho's translator interpreted as panic. The energy signatures we're detecting suggest weapons systems operating on unknown principles. This violates every agreement you signed. We signed agreements to limit our expansion and military development using Council-approved technologies, Deho corrected. We never agreed to stop thinking, stop learning, or stop preparing for the day you might decide we were too successful for your comfort. Captain Jung Minja's voice suddenly filled the chamber, broadcast from a location the Council's sensors couldn't identify. Admiral, all systems are showing green. Defensive positions established around every human colony. Stealth fleets are in position near major Council worlds. Awaiting your orders. The implication hit the Council members like a physical blow. Human ships were already positioned near their homeworlds, invisible to their most advanced detection systems. How long had they been there? How much of what the Council believed about human capabilities was completely wrong? You have 30 rotations to withdraw your ultimatum, Deho said quietly. Consider this your only warning. We came to the galaxy seeking friendship and cooperation. You chose to treat us as a threat to be contained rather than partners to be welcomed. His image began to fade as the quantum transmission ended. Now you will learn the difference between restraint and weakness. Choose your next actions very carefully. The chamber fell silent except for the increasingly urgent alerts from Council monitoring systems. Across human space, 50 years of careful deception was ending, and the galaxy was about to discover what humanity had really been building in the shadows. High Admiral Zenkari stood on the bridge of the massive dreadnought Council's will, watching the largest military force in galactic history move through space toward human territory. 43,000 warships from 11 different species stretched across the darkness like a metal constellation, each vessel representing millions of years of technological advancement and military experience. The Admiral's 4 arms moved across control panels with practiced efficiency, coordinating the movements of fleets that had never needed to work together before. The Zeltharian heavy cruisers moved in formation with Arcturian energy destroyers, while Veltharian assault ships flanked massive crystalline battleships that could crack planets with their main weapons. Surely they will surrender when they see this, muttered the hegemon of Zelthara from the command center's observation deck. Its tentacles coiled nervously around the railing as it watched the fleet displays. No rational species would face such overwhelming force. Zenkari was not so confident. The human admiral's calm demeanor during their last communication had been disturbing. Most species showed fear when facing Council military might. The humans had shown only a quiet determination that felt somehow more dangerous than rage. The fleet approached the outer edge of human space near the colony world of New Harmony. Long-range sensors detected the human defensive force waiting for them, and the readings made several Council officers check their equipment for malfunctions. The human fleet numbered fewer than 200 vessels, scattered across a defensive line that seemed impossibly thin. 200 ships against 43,000, the Arcturian fleet commander pulsed with colors that translated as disbelief. They must be planning to surrender. This cannot be their entire military force. But as the Council fleet moved closer, something strange began happening to their sensor readings. The human ships kept shifting position in ways that didn't match any known propulsion systems. One moment a vessel would be detected at the edge of scanner range, the next it would appear somewhere completely different without any indication of movement between positions. Commander Han Soyoung stood on the bridge of the human flagship Determination, her expression calm as she watched the massive enemy fleet approach. Her ship looked small and fragile compared to the Council dreadnoughts, its hull smooth and dark like polished stone. No obvious weapons were visible on its surface, no armor plating or defensive shields activated. All ships, she spoke into her communication system, weapons free. Show them what we learned during our exile. The engagement began when the Council fleet opened fire at maximum range, sending waves of energy and projectiles toward the human defensive line. The attacks should have vaporized the small human ships instantly. Instead, something impossible happened. The enemy fire simply disappeared. Not absorbed by shields or deflected by armor, but erased from existence as if it had never been fired at all. Council weapon systems registered successful targeting and firing, but their attacks vanished the moment they came within range of the human vessels. Then the humans began their response. The first Council ship to die was a Zeltharian heavy cruiser that had been leading the assault formation. One moment it was firing its main weapons at a human destroyer, the next it was expanding into a sphere of superheated gas. No human weapon had been seen firing. No energy signature had been detected. The massive warship had simply ceased to exist. More Council ships began dying with the same impossible efficiency. Massive dreadnoughts that had conquered dozens of star systems crumpled in on themselves as if their own gravity had suddenly increased 1,000-fold. Energy beings found their containment fields failing for no reason, their essence scattering into space. Crystalline battleships shattered like glass struck by invisible hammers. Captain Jung Minji watched the battle from her stealth ship positioned near the rear of the Council formation. Her vessel was invisible to their sensors, using technology that bent space around itself to remain undetected. She could see the panic spreading through the enemy fleet as their supposedly superior technology proved useless against human capabilities. Admiral Zenkari, she broadcast on an open channel, you are witnessing what happens when an ancient civilization meets one that never stopped evolving. Your technologies are based on principles we mastered centuries ago. Your weapons operate on theories we abandoned for better alternatives. The Council fleet tried to retreat, but found their ships responding sluggishly or not at all. Human technology had infiltrated their systems through methods Council scientists couldn't understand, turning their own vessels into prisons. Some ships simply stopped working, their crews finding themselves gently transported to nearby escape pods with life support systems that would keep them alive until rescue arrived. The battle lasted exactly 17 minutes and 43 seconds. When the sensor interference cleared, debris fields marked the locations where 3,847 Council warships had once been. The human fleet reported 0 casualties, their ships undamaged and ready for whatever came next. Zenkari found himself aboard an escape pod, his flagship nothing more than scattered atoms. Around him, thousands of other Council officers and crew members floated in similar pods, all equipped with the same message playing on repeat, you chose this conflict. We chose to limit the casualties. Consider this your only lesson in mercy. As rescue ships from surviving Council vessels began collecting the pods, a final transmission reached every communication system in the fleet. Commander Soyoung's voice carried clearly across space, calm and final. Return to your homeworlds. Tell your leaders that humanity offered friendship and received threats in return. We will not make that mistake again. The largest military force in galactic history limped home, carrying news that would reshape the galaxy forever. The age of Council dominance was over, ended not by conquest but by the simple demonstration that they had never been as advanced as they believed. 6 months had passed since the Battle of New Harmony, and the galaxy looked completely different. Ambassador Song Haeyoung stood at the observation deck of Earth's newest orbital station, watching ships from 4 to 7 different species dock at the massive ring structure that had become the center of galactic diplomacy. The old Council chambers on Zenthak Prime sat empty, their crystalline walls dark for the first time in 2 millennia. The transformation had been swift and surprisingly peaceful. Within weeks of news spreading about the Council fleet's defeat, member species began withdrawing from the ancient alliance. Not from fear alone, but from the sudden realization that the beings who had ruled them for so long were not the wise shepherds they claimed to be, but simply another species that had grown comfortable with power. Haeyoung walked through the station's corridors, past meeting rooms where former Council species now sat as equals with civilizations that had been suppressed for centuries. The Rigelian delegates worked alongside representatives from species that had been forbidden to develop space travel. Mining guilds that had been restricted to single systems now planned expeditions to distant galaxies. The few species that had chosen to continue the old ways of dominance and fear had learned quickly why that was no longer possible. The hegemon of Zelthera had attempted to rally the remaining loyalist fleets for one final assault on human space. Their armada of 12,000 ships had approached the Sol system with confident determination. They never found Earth. Admiral Li Qiwu had met them at the edge of the system, his single vessel appearing on their sensors like a ghost materializing from empty space. The conversation had been brief and final. "You are not welcome here," Qiwu had stated simply. "Turn back now, and your people will be permitted to return to their homeworld safely." The hegemon had responded with weapons fire, launching every destructive force at its disposal toward the lone human ship. The attacks had simply vanished, absorbed by defensive systems that operated beyond Zeltharian understanding. In response, Qiwu had activated a device that surrounded the entire enemy fleet in a barrier of solid energy. "Your ships can leave," Qiwu had explained to the trapped armada. "Your weapons cannot. Your choice is simple: return home peacefully, or remain here until you choose wisdom over warfare." The barrier had allowed life support and basic systems to function normally, but every weapon, every aggressive technology had simply stopped working. The Zeltharian fleet had drifted helplessly for 3 days before finally accepting the offer of safe passage home. Their homeworld now existed within a similar barrier, its population free to leave but unable to launch any hostile action against the galaxy beyond. Similar quarantines had been established around the few remaining aggressive species. The Arctarian Unity found their war fleets mysteriously transported to uninhabited systems whenever they attempted military action. The Crystalline Hegemony discovered that their planet-cracking weapons had been quietly disabled, their destructive potential permanently neutralized. But these enforcement actions were rare. Most species had embraced the new order with enthusiasm that surprised even human observers. The galaxy had been tired of fear-based governance, ready for something different after 2,000 years of imposed peace through strength. Trade networks that had been restricted by council regulations flourished as species gained access to technologies and resources previously forbidden to them. The Antarian civilization, which had been limited to agricultural worlds, revealed remarkable talents for stellar engineering when given the freedom to explore. The Proximan collectives, once restricted to basic mining operations, developed new forms of art and music that spread across dozens of systems. Hayoung entered the main assembly hall where representatives from across the galaxy had gathered to mark the first anniversary of what historians were already calling the Great Transition. Unlike the old council chamber with its towering seats and intimidating architecture, this space had been designed for equals. Circular tables allowed face-to-face conversation, while translation systems ensured every voice could be heard clearly. Captain Kim Taehyung stood at the central podium, his uniform bearing the simple insignia of the Galactic Defense Force, humanity's new contribution to maintaining peace. Behind him, holographic displays showed the remarkable progress achieved in just 1 year. Infant mortality rates had dropped across 17 species as medical knowledge flowed freely between worlds. Agricultural production had increased by 40% as farming techniques developed on hostile worlds were shared with struggling colonies. The old council maintained order through fear, Taehyung addressed the assembly. They believed that peace could only exist when enforced by superior strength. "We have proven that cooperation built on mutual respect creates prosperity that benefits everyone." A Rigelian delegate raised her appendage for recognition. "What assurance do we have that humanity will not become what the council was? Your power is clearly far beyond ours." Taehyung smiled, the expression visible to every member of the assembly through their translation systems. "Because we remember what it felt like to be the junior partners, to have our growth restricted and our potential dismissed. We will not repeat that mistake." He activated a holographic display showing the defense installations that now protected the galaxy's major trade routes. Unlike the Council's massive military bases, these were clearly defensive in nature, designed to stop pirates and raiders rather than threaten entire civilizations. "We gave you a choice between cooperation and conflict," Taehyung concluded his address. "The galaxy chose wisely. Our role is simply to ensure it continues to have that choice." As the assembly began its daily sessions, ships from dozens of species continued arriving at the station. The galaxy had entered a new age, one built on hope rather than fear, cooperation rather than dominance. The transformation was complete. The old order was gone forever, replaced by something the galaxy had never experienced before: true peace, maintained not by force but by the shared understanding that working together created more than any species could achieve alone.